You know that feeling when you wake up and it just takes a little longer to want to get out of bed. Not because anything hurts particularly bad that day, but because you just don't feel quite interested. Maybe morning coffee doesn't taste the same. Maybe the crossword puzzle you used to enjoy feels more effort than it's worth. You're quieter at family dinners. You find yourself saying, "I'm fine," more often, even though something feels different inside. It's not dramatic. You're not in a crisis. But somewhere along the way, things you used to look forward to have become things you just get through. And when you mention it to your doctor or your family, they nod sympathetically and say something like, "Well, we all slow down a bit as we get older." And maybe that's true to some degree, but this feels like more than slowing down. This feels like the color's been turned down on your days, and you can't quite figure out when it happened or why. If that sounds familiar, I want you to know you're not imagining it, and you're certainly not alone. What I'm going to share with you today isn't about diagnosing depression or convincing you to start a new medication. This is about something much quieter and much more common than most people realize. It's about protecting your daily mood and energy by understanding one simple thing that's probably sitting in your kitchen right now. Something that might be gently pulling the ground out from under you without making a sound. Because here's what I've learned after years of working with adults just like you. The things that affect us most after 60 are rarely the big, obvious problems. They're the small, steady ones, the ones that build up so gradually we don't notice until we're sitting at the breakfast table one morning wondering why we just don't feel like ourselves anymore. And very often, the answer isn't complicated. It's just hidden. It's in the routines we trust, the foods we've eaten for years, the habits we never thought to question. This video isn't about taking anything away from you or making you feel like you've done something wrong. It's about giving you one piece of information that can help you feel steadier, clearer, and more like the person you still are inside. Because you deserve to wake up with energy. You deserve to enjoy your hobbies. You deserve to feel engaged in your own life, not like you're watching it from a distance. And sometimes, all it takes is understanding what's quietly working against you, so you can make one or two small changes that bring you back to center. So let's talk about what's really going on, why it's so easy to miss, and what you can do about it starting today. Not tomorrow, not after another doctor's appointment. Today. Because staying steady, staying yourself, and staying independent all begin with the same foundation. Knowing what helps you and what doesn't. And having the confidence to make choices that protect the life you've worked so hard to build. I've spent years working alongside older adults, listening to their concerns, watching patterns emerge, and learning to spot the things that get overlooked in 10-minute doctor visits. I've seen the same story play out dozens, maybe hundreds of times. And I've learned that the answers people need most are often the simplest ones, the ones that get buried under assumptions about what's normal and what isn't. When someone in their 60s or 70s tells me they're feeling low, that they're not enjoying things anymore, that getting through the day feels harder than it used to, the response they usually get is some version of sympathy mixed with resignation. Well, you're not 20 anymore. It's normal to slow down. Maybe you're just depressed. Let's try a medication. And sure, sometimes medication is absolutely the right answer. But what I've observed again and again is that mood changes in older adults are dismissed far too quickly as inevitable consequences of aging, when in reality, they're often signals that something specific has shifted, something we can actually address. The truth is, your brain at 65 isn't broken. It's experienced. It's capable. But it does have different needs than it did at 30. And when those needs aren't met, you feel it. Not always as pain, not always as something you can point to and say, "That's the problem." More often, it shows up as a kind of dimming, a loss of spark, a sense that you're still here, still functioning, but not quite thriving the way you used to. What's reassuring, and what I want you to hold on to as we go through this, is that many seniors experience exactly what you're experiencing. And for a lot of them, small insights about what they're eating make an enormous difference. I'm not talking about restrictive diets or giving up everything you enjoy. I'm talking about understanding how certain foods interact with your body at this stage of life and making adjustments that are so manageable you barely notice them, except that you start feeling more like yourself again. I've sat with people who thought they were losing their edge, who worried they were becoming a burden, who quietly wondered if this was just what the rest of life was going to feel like. And then they changed one or two things about what they ate for breakfast or what they snacked on in the afternoon. And within a couple of weeks, they had energy again. They wanted to see friends again. They started enjoying their garden or their books or their grandkids in a way that had started to slip away. That's not a miracle. That's just what happens when you stop straining your system in ways you didn't realize you were, and start supporting it in ways that match where you are now. Your body is still strong, your mind is still sharp, but both need the right fuel, and if that fuel has been quietly working against you instead of for you, everything starts to feel harder than it should. Now, let us look at your own experience. Have you noticed feeling lower or more withdrawn, especially after certain meals or times of day? Maybe mid-morning after breakfast? Or that slump in the afternoon that feels heavier than it used to? If that rings true for you, I'd love to hear about it. Drop a comment below and let me know when you tend to feel it most. You might be surprised how many others are nodding along with you. And sometimes, just knowing you're not alone in this makes all the difference. Now, let me tell you about Catherine. She was 68 when her daughter brought her in to talk with me. And honestly, Catherine didn't think there was much to talk about. She wasn't sick. She wasn't in pain. She was just, in her words, tired. Tired of feeling tired. She'd wake up, and it would take her until almost lunchtime to feel like doing anything. She'd stopped going to her book club. She'd let her garden go a bit. When her grandkids came over, she loved seeing them. But she didn't have the energy to really engage the way she used to. She'd sit on the couch and smile and nod. But inside, she felt like she was watching from behind glass. Her doctor had run the usual tests. Thyroid was fine. Blood pressure was managed. No signs of anything alarming. The conclusion was straightforward. She was getting older, maybe a little depressed, and if it got worse, they could talk about medication. Catherine accepted that. She figured this was just what 70 looked like. Even though she wasn't 70 yet, and some part of her suspected she shouldn't feel this drained, this disconnected, this early. Her daughter wasn't convinced. She'd noticed the change had been gradual but steady over the past year or so, and she kept asking her mom questions. When do you feel worst? What does a normal day look like? What are you eating? And that last question turned out to be the one that mattered. Catherine's breakfast routine had been the same for years. She'd wake up, make a cup of coffee with 2 sugars, and have a toasted bagel with a little butter and jam, or sometimes a muffin if she had one in the house. It was easy, it was comforting, it was what she'd always done. Then, mid-morning, she'd feel a dip, a kind of heaviness. She'd sit down to rest and find it hard to get back up. She assumed that was just her body telling her to take it easy, so she did. She'd have a snack, maybe some crackers or a granola bar, something to keep her going until lunch. But the energy never really came back. The rest of the day was a slow drag, and by evening, she was too worn out to do much more than watch television. When we started talking about what she was eating, Catherine was a little defensive at first, and I understood why. She wasn't eating junk food, she wasn't binging on sweets. She was having normal meals, the kind of meals she'd eaten her whole adult life. But here's what we discovered together. What had worked fine for her body at 40 or even 50 wasn't working the same way at 68. And the breakfast she thought was harmless, maybe even healthy, was quietly setting her up for an entire day of blood sugar swings, energy crashes, and a brain that couldn't get the steady fuel it needed to keep her feeling like herself. That bagel, that muffin, that sweet coffee, they were all hitting her system as pure sugar. Fast, high, and then gone. Her blood sugar would spike within 30 minutes. Her body would rush to bring it back down, and by mid-morning, she'd be in a low that felt like exhaustion, like sadness, like she just didn't have anything left to give. And because she didn't understand what was happening, she'd reach for more quick carbohydrates to pull herself back up, and the cycle would start all over again, all day long, every single day. Catherine wasn't depressed because she was old. She wasn't tired because her body was failing. She was struggling because her brain chemistry was being quietly destabilized every morning before she even got dressed. And nobody had thought to connect what she was eating to how she was feeling. It wasn't on anyone's radar. It didn't show up in her blood work. It wasn't something her doctor asked about. It was invisible, except that it wasn't. It was showing up in her mood, her energy, her withdrawal from the life she'd built, and her growing belief that this was just what the rest of her years were going to feel like. We didn't overhaul her entire diet. We didn't put her on some strict plan or take away everything she enjoyed. We just changed her breakfast. We added protein. We added healthy fat. We swapped the bagel for eggs and a slice of whole grain toast with avocado. We replaced the sweet coffee with something less sugary, or sometimes she'd had it black with a handful of nuts on the side. Small changes, simple swaps, things she could do every single day without feeling deprived or overwhelmed. Within 2 weeks, Catherine called her daughter and said, "I think I'm starting to feel better." Within a month, she was back at book club. She was on her knees in the garden again. She was playing on the floor with her grandkids, not just watching from the couch. She hadn't started a new medication. She hadn't discovered some miracle cure. She just stopped flooding her system with something that was working against her and started giving her brain the steady, sustainable fuel it needed to let her be herself again. That's the story I want you to hold on to as we move forward. Because if Catherine's experience sounds anything like yours, there's a very good chance the same thing that was quietly pulling her down is doing the same to you. And the good news is, you don't need a prescription to fix it. So let's talk about what's actually happening inside your body when you eat, and why it matters more now than it did 20 or 30 years ago. This isn't about blaming you or making you feel like your body has betrayed you. It's about understanding that your digestive system at 65 or 70 works differently than it did at 40. And when we don't adjust what we're putting into it, we end up with consequences that show up in unexpected places, particularly in how we feel emotionally and mentally. Your gut is where everything begins. It's where food gets broken down, where nutrients get absorbed, where your body decides what to keep and what to let go. When you're younger, that system is remarkably forgiving. You can eat almost anything, and your body will extract what it needs, process the rest, and keep you running smoothly. But as you age, that process becomes less efficient. Your stomach produces less acid, which means proteins don't break down as completely. Your intestines don't absorb vitamins and minerals as readily. The beneficial bacteria in your gut, the ones that help with digestion and even mood regulation, start to shift in balance. It's not dysfunction, it's just change. But if you keep eating the same way you always have, you're asking a different system to do the same job. Now, think of your brain as a garden. A healthy garden needs consistent care, the right soil, the right nutrients, water, sunlight. If any one of those things is missing or inconsistent, the garden doesn't thrive. It doesn't die overnight, but it starts to look a little dull. The color fades. Things stop growing the way they should. Your brain works the same way. It needs specific nutrients to produce the chemicals that regulate your mood, your motivation, your sense of well-being. We're talking about serotonin, dopamine, chemicals you've probably heard of, but might not realize are built directly from the foods you eat. When your gut isn't absorbing nutrients properly, your brain doesn't get the building blocks it needs. The vitamins, which are critical for energy and mood, get absorbed in the intestines. If your digestion is off, you're not getting enough, even if you're eating foods that contain them. Magnesium, which helps calm your nervous system and support sleep, same story. Omega-3 fatty acids, which reduce inflammation and support brain cell communication, those need a well-functioning gut to make it into your bloodstream. So even if you think you're eating well, if your system isn't processing it correctly, your brain is running on empty, and you feel it as low mood, as fatigue, as that persistent sense that something's just not right. But it's not just about what you're not getting. It's also about what you are getting, particularly when it comes to foods that cause inflammation. And here's where things get a little more complicated, because inflammation isn't always the kind you can see or feel. You're not swollen, you're not in pain. But inside, at a cellular level, certain foods trigger a low-grade inflammatory response that your body has to manage every single day. Highly processed foods, refined sugars, white flour, these break down into glucose so quickly that your blood sugar spikes, your body panics, releases insulin to bring it back down, and in that process, inflammation gets turned on like a background hum you can't quite hear, but that never stops. Chronic low-level inflammation is one of the most under-recognized drivers of mood problems in older adults. It interferes with the production of serotonin. It disrupts communication between brain cells. It makes your whole system work harder to maintain balance. And when your system is already working harder just to digest and absorb food properly, that extra burden becomes too much. You wake up feeling unrested. You move through the day feeling disconnected. You assume it's just aging, but it's not. It's your brain trying to function in an environment that's constantly under stress, and that stress is coming from what you're eating. Here's the thing that's so important to understand. This isn't about age making you weak or broken. Your body at 70 is still capable of remarkable things. But it has different needs, and it responds differently to different inputs. A young digestive system can handle a sugar rush and recover quickly. An older one can't. A younger brain might shrug off a little inflammation. An older brain, which is already managing the natural changes that come with time, feels it more acutely. It's not failure, it's just biology. And once you understand the biology, you can work with it instead of against it. When you eat foods that spike your blood sugar, cause inflammation, and fail to provide the nutrients your brain needs, you're essentially asking your garden to grow in poor soil, with no water and inconsistent sunlight. And then you're surprised when nothing blooms. But the soil isn't ruined. The garden isn't dead. It just needs the right conditions, and those conditions are completely within your control. The fatigue, the flatness, the lack of interest, these aren't character flaws, and they're not inevitable. They're symptoms of a system that's being asked to run on the wrong fuel. Your gut can't process certain foods the way it used to. That affects what your brain receives. What your brain receives affects how you feel. And how you feel affects everything else: your relationships, your independence, your sense of purpose, and joy. So when I say this is about food, I'm not talking about vanity or weight loss or fitting into old clothes. I'm talking about giving your brain what it actually needs to let you feel like yourself. I'm talking about reducing the hidden inflammation that's quietly stealing your energy. I'm talking about stabilizing your blood sugar so your mood stays steady instead of swinging from high to low all day long. And I'm talking about doing it in a way that's gentle, sustainable, and respectful of the life you've built and the wisdom you've earned. Because you deserve to feel good. And very often, it starts with something as simple as understanding what's happening, and then making a few small changes that let your body do what it's still absolutely capable of doing, keeping you steady, strong, and fully alive. So let's name it clearly. The quiet driver behind so much of what you're feeling is highly processed foods and excess refined sugar. Not occasionally, not as a treat now and then, but as a steady daily presence in your diet that's doing two harmful things at once. First, it's creating chronic inflammation that interferes with your brain's ability to regulate mood. And second, it's actively depleting the very nutrients your brain needs most. Things like B vitamins, omega-3 fatty acids, and magnesium, all of which are essential for energy, calm, and emotional balance. When I say processed foods, I'm talking about the things that come in boxes and bags and have ingredient lists you can't pronounce. Packaged snack cakes, white bread, sugary cereals, crackers made from refined flour, frozen meals loaded with sodium and preservatives, sodas and sweetened drinks. These aren't occasional indulgences for many seniors. They've become staples, often because they're convenient, affordable, shelf-stable, and familiar. No one told you they were dangerous. In fact, many of them are marketed as wholesome or even healthy. But what they actually do, especially in an aging body, is flood your system with rapidly absorbed sugars and chemicals that trigger inflammation and starve your brain of what it needs to keep you stable. Refined sugar is particularly insidious because it doesn't just fail to nourish you, it actively pulls nutrients out of your system. When your body processes sugar, it uses up B vitamins to metabolize it. So every time you have that muffin, that sweetened coffee, that granola bar that's more dessert than nutrition, you're not just missing an opportunity to feed your brain, you're spending resources your body doesn't have in abundance anymore. And over time, that depletion shows up as fatigue, irritability, low mood, and difficulty concentrating. But because it happens gradually, because there's no single moment where you can say, that's when it started, it gets written off as just part of getting older. Here's what frustrates me, and what I know frustrates many of you. Routine medical checkups almost never connect diet to mood in seniors. Your doctor checks your blood pressure, your cholesterol, maybe your blood sugar if you're diabetic or pre-diabetic. They ask if you're sleeping, if you're in pain, if you're managing your medications. But they rarely ask what you ate for breakfast. They don't ask if you're snacking on processed foods throughout the day. They don't talk about inflammation or nutrient depletion unless you're presenting with a specific deficiency that's severe enough to show up on a blood test. And even then, the conversation is usually about supplements, not about changing what you're eating in the first place. When you mention that you're feeling low, that you're not enjoying things, that you're tired all the time, the response is often swift and well-meaning, but incomplete. Sounds like depression. Let's try an antidepressant. And I want to be clear, antidepressants save lives. For many people, they are absolutely necessary and effective. But for many others, especially older adults whose mood changes are directly tied to what they're eating, medicating the symptom without addressing the cause means you're taking a pill every day to manage a problem that could be significantly improved or even resolved by changing what's on your plate. The medical system isn't set up to catch this. A standard office visit is 15 minutes, maybe 20 if you're lucky. There's no time to talk about your daily routine, your eating habits, the subtle patterns that have developed over months or years. There's no billing code for nutrition counseling for mood support in seniors. And frankly, most doctors aren't trained to think about food as medicine, especially not in the context of mental health. So the connection gets missed. You get a prescription. You're told to follow up in 6 weeks. And if the medication doesn't help, or if it does but you're still not feeling like yourself, you're left wondering what else is wrong with you. When the truth is, nothing else is wrong. The root cause just hasn't been addressed. I've spoken with so many seniors who felt unheard in these moments, who've tried to explain that something feels off, that this isn't just sadness or grief or loneliness, that it's a physical flatness, a dimming, a lack of spark. And they've been met with kind smiles and reassurances that this is normal, that everyone slows down, that there's a pill for that. It's invalidating. It makes you feel like you're complaining about nothing, or worse, like you're losing your grip on reality. But you're not. What you're feeling is real. It's a direct result of your brain being under-resourced and overinflamed. And the fact that your doctor didn't ask about your diet doesn't mean diet isn't the issue. It just means the system has a blind spot. And you've been standing right in the middle of it. The foods that are hurting you aren't exotic or unusual. They're everywhere. They're normalized. They're what's served at community centers and church gatherings. They're what's on sale at the grocery store. They're what you grew up with, what you've trusted for decades. And because they're so common, because everyone else is eating them too, it doesn't occur to anyone, including you, that they might be the reason you're struggling. But the truth is, these foods are designed to be cheap, convenient, and long-lasting. They're not designed to nourish an aging brain. They're not designed to reduce inflammation. They're not designed with your well-being in mind at all. And here's the hard part. Even when you start to suspect that what you're eating might be affecting how you're feeling, it's difficult to know what to do about it. You're bombarded with conflicting advice. One expert says cut carbs. Another says go plant-based. Another says it's all about supplements. You don't have the energy to figure it out, and you don't want to make things more complicated than they already are. So you keep doing what you've always done, and you keep feeling the way you've been feeling, and the gap between who you are and who you want to be just keeps getting wider. But it doesn't have to. Once you see the pattern, once you understand that the processed foods and excess sugar in your daily routine are quietly driving inflammation and starving your brain, you can start making different choices. Not perfect choices, not restrictive or punishing choices, just better ones. Small, steady shifts that give your body what it's been asking for all along. And when you do that, when you stop adding fuel to the fire and start feeding the garden, things change. Not overnight, but noticeably, reliably, in ways that give you back your energy, your clarity, and your sense of self. And that's not too much to ask for. Let's get practical now, because understanding what's happening is only useful if you know what to do about it. And I want to be very clear from the start. This is not about perfection. It's not about never enjoying a treat or turning your entire kitchen upside down. It's about recognizing the routines that are quietly adding strain to your system and making small, consistent adjustments that protect your mood, your energy, and your ability to feel like yourself. That's it. Small and consistent. Those are the two words that matter most. So let's start with what's adding strain. The daily habits that seem harmless but are working against you. Breakfast is usually where the trouble starts. A pastry from the bakery, a couple slices of white toast with jam, a bowl of sweetened cereal, even those instant oatmeal packets with the flavoring already mixed in. These all break down into sugar almost immediately. They taste good, they're easy, they've been part of your routine for years, but they spike your blood sugar fast, leave you with no lasting energy, and set you up for cravings and crashes all day long. Your brain gets a brief rush, and then it's starving again by mid-morning, and you're reaching for something else just to keep going. Then there are the snacks. Crackers, cookies, packaged granola bars, pretzels, chips. These are what's in the pantry, what's easy to grab, what doesn't require any preparation. But almost all of them are made from refined flour and added sugars, and they do the same thing breakfast does. Quick energy, quick crash, and nothing your brain can actually use to stay steady. Processed snacks aren't giving you fuel. They're giving you a temporary patch that makes the underlying problem worse. Pre-packaged meals are another common strain. Frozen dinners, canned soups, deli meats, anything designed for convenience usually comes with high sodium, preservatives, unhealthy fats, and very little in the way of actual nutrition. They fill your stomach, but they don't nourish your cells, and over time that gap between being full and being fed gets wider and wider. Your body knows the difference, even if your mind doesn't, and it shows up as fatigue, brain fog, and that persistent low mood you can't shake. And then there are the drinks. Regular soda, sweetened iced tea, fruit juices, flavored coffees loaded with sugar and syrup. Liquid sugar is one of the fastest ways to destabilize your blood sugar and trigger inflammation. And because it doesn't feel like eating, because it's just something you sip throughout the day, it's easy to underestimate how much damage it's doing. A can of soda here, a sweetened coffee there. And by the end of the day, you've consumed more sugar than your body can handle, and your brain is paying the price. One more thing that adds strain, and this one's subtle: not getting enough protein or healthy fat. A lot of seniors, especially those living alone or those trying to keep meals simple, end up eating mostly carbohydrates. Toast for breakfast, a sandwich for lunch, pasta for dinner. It's easy, it's familiar, and it feels like enough. But without adequate protein and fat, your brain doesn't get the building blocks it needs for neurotransmitters. And your blood sugar has nothing to slow it down. You end up on a roller coaster all day. Now, let's talk about protection. The simple swaps and additions that reduce strain and give your body what it actually needs. The most important change you can make is how you start your day. Instead of pastries or sugary cereal, start with protein and healthy fat. Eggs scrambled or boiled with a slice of whole grain toast and some avocado. Greek yogurt, the plain kind, with a handful of berries and some walnuts or almonds. A smoothie made with protein powder, spinach, frozen fruit, and a spoonful of flaxseed. These breakfasts stabilize your blood sugar, keep you full longer, and give your brain the fats and amino acids it needs to produce mood-regulating chemicals. You'll notice the difference within days, not weeks. When it comes to bread, pasta, and rice, choose whole grains whenever you can. Whole wheat bread instead of light. Brown rice instead of light. Oats instead of sugary cereal. Whole grains digest more slowly. They don't spike your blood sugar the same way, and they come with fiber and nutrients that processed grains have been stripped of. It's a simple swap, and it makes a significant difference in how steady you feel throughout the day. Add vegetables, especially leafy greens, and anything colorful. Spinach, kale, broccoli, bell peppers, carrots, tomatoes. These are packed with the vitamins and minerals your brain needs, and they help reduce inflammation. You don't need to eat salads all day. Just add a handful of spinach to your eggs. Have some steamed broccoli with dinner. Keep baby carrots or cherry tomatoes around for snacking. Small additions every day, and they add up. Omega-3 fatty acids are critical for brain health and mood regulation, and most seniors aren't getting nearly enough. Fatty fish like salmon, sardines, or mackerel a couple times a week is ideal. If you don't like fish, walnuts, flaxseed, and chia seeds are good plant-based sources. You can sprinkle ground flaxseed on yogurt or oatmeal. You can snack on walnuts. You can add chia seeds to a smoothie. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be consistent. Hydration matters more than most people realize. Your brain is about 73% water, and even mild dehydration affects mood, concentration, and energy. Drink water throughout the day. Not soda, not sweetened drinks, just water. If plain water feels boring, add a slice of lemon or cucumber. Keep a glass by your chair. Sip it while you read or watch television. It's one of the easiest things you can do to support your brain, and it costs almost nothing. Here's what I want you to remember. You don't have to do all of this at once. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to throw out everything in your kitchen and start over. Just pick one thing. Maybe it's changing your breakfast. Maybe it's swapping white bread for whole grain. Maybe it's drinking more water and less soda. Start there. Do it consistently for a week or two. Notice how you feel. And then, when you're ready, add one more small change. This isn't about restriction or deprivation. It's about protection. It's about giving your body and your brain the steady, reliable support they need so you can feel steady and reliable in your own life. Because you've worked too hard and come too far to spend your days feeling dim and disconnected. You deserve energy. You deserve clarity. You deserve to enjoy your life. And very often, it starts with something as simple as what you put on your plate. I want to leave you with something bigger than just a list of foods to eat or avoid. I want you to understand that what we've been talking about here isn't really about diet in the way most people think of it. It's not about losing weight or following rules or proving anything to anyone. It's about something far more important than that. It's about protecting your independence. It's about preserving your quality of life. It's about making sure that the years ahead of you are years you get to fully live, not just endure. When your mood is stable, when you have energy, when you feel like yourself, everything else becomes possible. You can stay connected to the people you love. You can keep doing the things that give your life meaning. You can make your own decisions, take care of yourself, and move through your days with confidence and purpose. But when your mood is low, when you're exhausted, when you feel flat and disconnected, all of that starts to slip away. It's harder to stay social. It's harder to stay active. It's harder to advocate for yourself or ask for what you need. And over time, that loss of engagement leads to a loss of independence. Not because your body failed you, but because your brain didn't have what it needed to keep you steady. That's why this matters so much. Protecting your mood isn't vanity. It's not optional. It's foundational. It's what allows you to remain the author of your own life instead of someone who's just going through the motions. And the good news, the really encouraging news, is that you have more control over this than you might have thought. You can't control everything about aging. You can't stop time. But you can absolutely control what you're putting into your body. And when you make choices that support your brain instead of undermining it, you give yourself the best possible chance to stay vibrant, engaged, and fully yourself for as long as possible. So, here's the principle I want you to remember. The one idea that ties everything together and makes it easy to know what to do in any given moment. Stable blood sugar, stable mood. That's it. If you can keep your blood sugar steady throughout the day, your mood will follow. If your blood sugar is spiking and crashing, your mood will too. It's that simple. And keeping your blood sugar stable doesn't require a medical degree or a complicated meal plan. It just requires understanding that protein, healthy fat, and fiber slow down digestion and keep everything even, while sugar and refined carbs speed it up and send you on a roller coaster you didn't ask to ride. Every time you sit down to eat, ask yourself, is this going to keep me steady, or is this going to spike me and drop me? If it's the latter, see if there's a simple adjustment you can make. Add some protein. Add some fat. Choose the whole grain version. Have some vegetables on the side. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be mindful. And over time, those small, steady choices create a foundation that holds you up instead of letting you down. The hidden dietary strain we've talked about today, the processed foods, the excess sugar, the lack of nutrients your brain depends on, that strain has been quietly pulling the ground out from under you. But now you see it. You understand what's been happening and why. And that means you can stop adding to it. You can start making choices that reduce the strain and give your brain the support it's been asking for all along. You can give yourself the gift of stable energy, clearer thinking, better sleep, and a mood that feels like your own again, instead of something that's happening to you. This isn't going to be an overnight transformation. Your body needs time to adjust, to heal, to rebuild its nutrient stores, and calm the inflammation that's been simmering for months or even years. But if you're consistent, if you make these small changes part of your daily routine and stick with them, you will feel the difference. Maybe not tomorrow, but soon. You'll wake up with a little more energy. You'll find yourself looking forward to things again. You'll have moments where you realize You haven't felt this good in a long time, and you'll know exactly why. And here's what I hope you'll hold on to when the old habits start calling you back. When convenience or comfort or just plain fatigue make you want to reach for what's familiar. You are worth the effort. You are worth the few extra minutes it takes to make a better breakfast. You are worth choosing water over soda, whole grain over white, vegetables over processed snacks. You spent your whole life taking care of other people, working hard, showing up, doing what needed to be done. Now it's time to take care of yourself with that same commitment, that same steadiness. Not because you have to prove anything, but because you deserve to feel good in your own skin for as long as you're here. Reducing hidden dietary strain isn't just about avoiding harm. It's about creating the conditions that let you thrive. It's about giving your brain the stable foundation it needs to keep you engaged, connected, and capable. It's about protecting the life you've built and making sure the years ahead are full of presence, not absence, full of color, not dimness, full of you, the real you, the one who's still in there and just needs the right support to come back to the surface. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. Think about one small food swap you're willing to try this week. Just one. Maybe it's starting your day with eggs instead of cereal. Maybe it's swapping your afternoon soda for water with lemon. Maybe it's adding a handful of spinach to your dinner. Whatever it is, drop it in the comments below. Share it with this community, because when we make these changes together, when we support each other and remind each other why it matters, it gets easier. And you might just inspire someone else who's been struggling and didn't know where to start. You've got this. You're not too old, you're not too far gone, and it's not too late. Your brain is still capable of balance, clarity, and joy. You just have to give it what it needs. Stable blood sugar, stable mood. Remember that, live that, and watch how much of yourself comes back. Thank you for being here, thank you for listening, and thank you for taking your health seriously enough to make changes that will carry you forward with strength and dignity. Subscribe for more powerful advice concerning your health. I'll see you in the next one.